So, hello everyone, this is Riju Dhakal. Currently, I'm the president at Yuwa. So, Yuwa is a youth-led, youth-run organization, and we typically work for young people. We have our different thematic areas, which are classified into three, which is basically sexual and reproductive health and rights, active citizenship, and research unit. And while working on this, our main theme, the major focus that we carry upon is young people and their issues. So we work on dynamic young people's issues around, and then the cross-cutting evidence generation comes along with the different thematic areas that we work along. Our most important mission that we carry along is that young people should be at the decision-making levels, and they should be very important stakeholders of all developmental activities going along. So that's the vision that we carry around for Yuwa, and for that we are working with young people, by young people, and for young people at all times. So under sexual and reproductive health and rights, that's our department, we have few issues that we are currently focusing on. However, this does not mean that we do not regard other issues as less tackling or less important or something like that. However, our major focus has been on areas that we've developed our expertise over the period of time, and having worked with young people, we've realized that this connects more to young people that we're currently working with. And it has been mostly comprehensive sexuality education, which is also called Brihattar Yaunikta Shiksha in Nepali. So it's basically for in-school or out-of-school young children, but we want everybody to have the right, accurate kind of information which is evidence-based, and it just does not involve sex in the sex education, but it has a lot of other things that comes along with sex education, like you bring around the intersectionalities around sex education around young people. You also talk about different aspects like consent, pleasure, rights, sexual rights, reproductive rights. You talk about patriarchal violence, you talk about different other concepts within it, and there's of course a portion on anatomy, body positivity and things like that, but that's been our main focus over the past few years. Besides that, we're also working equally on areas like safe abortion. We're working on areas like gender equality and gender responsible society, and yeah, that's been our most important areas for the past few years. So, sexual and reproductive health and rights is particularly an area here where you have an ideal set of almost everything that comes along. Okay, whether it's just an incident of violence, you already have a picture of what violence should look like, or whether you're talking about SRHR, then you already have a picture of sex behind yourself. When you're talking about pleasure, then it's regarded to be of certain community, or the patriarchal dominance upon the concept of pleasure itself. So there's always an ideal stature upon different concepts of sexual and reproductive health and rights, and this is where we think young people can actually bring their voice, because this shouldn't be ideal, it should be unique, and it should be very personal to everybody around, and it's the young people who are actually responsible for taking away this information, sharing this information, and also deciding for themselves, because you just don't start talking about sex when you get married, because that's a hilarious stature that we've set for the community, but that's not how it should be. You should be understanding your body, you should be making decisions for your body, you should be understanding what's right, what's wrong, and there are several other components that adds to your sexual life or your sexual activity in itself. So these things are very important for a person to make their own decisions, and they should be reflected in the society that they belong to as well. So as young people, we consider them as stakeholders. So as stakeholders, we want them to be in a position where they're actually influencing policies, because ultimately the policies are the guiding factors that guide your whole life or your being into a certain community. So we understand that young people should be those important factors in doing that as well. So it gives me immense pleasure to talk about this, because we at Yuwa, we believe in the system of leadership transformation. So we have leadership transformation in like every 2 years, which means that a whole tenure of executive body gets changed in every 2 years, and in every 2 years we have this young energy coming up, reliving again the whole journey of Yuwa and its executive board and meetings and stuff like that. So Yuwa's journey for the past few years has been expanding, it has been exploring its area, but it has been working on young people, and it has been true to its feelings and values that is carried, which is the UY culture that we call it very proudly, where we respect young people, we believe in creating a safe space for young people, and we believe in discussions with young people itself. So our journey has been around taking different steps through different components, factors of SRHR mostly, and besides that we've also focused on youth leadership. So there are other components that we're also working with, where we've worked with projects that are related to HIV and AIDS, where we've worked with projects that are related to contraceptives and family planning. Then we've come up to safe abortion, patriarchal violence and stuff, gender equality, and now we're currently working for comprehensive sexuality education. So there are different topics that we've touched upon these past few years, and our major approach to this has always been young people at the forefront. We consider young people as advocates for the society, and we believe that they have the leadership to take forward the advocacy. So our major approach has always been creating and impacting lives through youth advocates. So we create groups and circles of youth advocates around, who go around, be in their communities and respond to the different reflections that they see in their community regarding SRHR issues. And we have peer education sessions, we have different consultations, discussion programs, and this has been going along. There are some in-house programs, there are some projects that we do. Projects are funded, but the in-house programs are something that we carry along through a long lineage of Yuwa's tenureship that has been ongoing and changing for so many years for now. So it has been around the same. And I think the most important positive impact that we've had upon the community or young people is that we've been a voice of so many young people, and it gives us that pleasure to recognize so many young people's lives that we've touched through our programs, whether it's by creating youth leaders, youth advocates, peer educators, or SRHR advocates who are now representing Nepal in itself to regional, international advocacy spaces, talking about SRHR. And we're also working for policy advocacy, so we have made that platform for ourselves in national level advocacy programs as well, where we are a part of CSE technical working group, which works for CSE curriculum revision in and around government sectors and spaces like that. So I think these are some of the most important factors that we've contributed to that. And besides that as well, we are also focused on evidence generation. So our resources are a huge part of what SRHR evidence now is at Nepal itself, because we've been creating so many resources, so many researches are being done around SRHR and young people specifically. So I think we've been creating an impact on that line as well. So advocacy in itself is not a very easy task for any organization, and as a civil society organization, Yuwa has to become a watchdog for the activities that it's advocating for, or it's talking to some policymakers, then we'll have to be the watchdogs of that particular sector. So as the youth watchdog for SRHR, it has always been difficult in establishing that platform of trust among our policymakers, among different stakeholders, because of the changing leadership that we've had. But that has also been a very good strength at Yuwa, because we're always young, we always have a renewed energy in every 2 years, and it's 2 years is such a time that all young people can enjoy, learn, and then take forward their particular vision. And then another 2 years, there's that value that instills in us and that holds us all together. But then there's this larger purpose that we carry for Yuwa, and that keeps changing over the past 2 years, and it just becomes a beautiful journey then after. But this has been challenging because for SRHR advocacy itself, there are so many topics, there are so many sectors that are specifically connected to families, to gatekeeping, or to communities itself. And when it comes down to these interpersonal relationships or communal settings that we are in, then a lot of things become stigmatized, and a lot of things tend to have that normalcy standard that you usually don't want to see in SRHR related concepts or sectors that we usually talk about. Then it becomes a little difficult to gain that public support on the convincing side for SRHR, and mostly related to advocacy. And also, in addition to that, comprehensive sexuality education in itself is such a new term here. It's such a new revolution that is being carried around, because in a school where you're actually very shy to talk about your simple anatomy, talking about so many other things that are related to the anatomy or to sex education is such a big thing here. And talking about these kind of things and then making people understand that this is actually necessary based on these evidences and these statistics, it takes us it takes a lot of time, it takes lots of researching, it takes a lot of support from the public, and it takes a lot of motivation as young people as well, because there are always those counter facts that are being provided to us which say that we are talking about sex education and there are these many components that are related to sex education, and there's always this fabrication of the whole scenario that's around comprehensive sexuality education, because people are usually not very open to discussing this in platforms, or let's say formal platforms like schools or families or peer circles, and it becomes a little difficult to get us that convincing power and to get us that support for the advocacy efforts. I've been following Feminist Futures Nepal as well as Shida Kranti, and it gives me such great pleasure to see young females leading such huge campaigns around different aspects of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And you've always been helpful to us in carrying forward our mission, because you're young, you have that energy, you're that innovative faces for the sexual and reproductive health and rights that we can actually grow together. And we work in a sector where we need a lot of support. We work in a sector where we do not want our work to be fragmented, among the development partners or among different organizations working. So it's always good to collaborate, to communicate, to support each other, and to know what we are doing on each of our sectors. And there are programs that we conduct on our individual basis or from an institutional level, and it's always good that we can come together like this and celebrate the goodwill that we have around SRHR, because this is something that's very common and personal as well. So if we could do something together for this advocacy efforts and around comprehensive sexuality education, it would be always great. And one thing that I think is very important is that we should let this campaign be run by young people at all times, even if we are here or not, and wherever we reach, we'll be there to support. But then at every time, I think such campaigns that are always energy filled and that have a very beautiful motive behind them, I think they should be led by young people itself. I don't know if I'd call Yuwa successful enough, but we're definitely striving really hard for this, advocacy and all the efforts that we're doing around. There are lots of things that we as an organization should learn from you guys, and maybe, there can be times when we can collaborate and learn and share among each others. But I think it is important that we never forget that none of us are alone in this whole pathway that we are taking forward, and it is not a short or something, an assignment that gives us an immediate output or something like that. It is going to be a long run. It's going to be a run that we might have to switch spaces in between, switch platforms, but it is always going to be a run for young people and for their sexual and reproductive health and rights. So it's important that we all know that and realize that we are always in it together, and whenever we're there, we need to make ourselves seen at all times, because there's a tendency that we are as young feminist growing organizations, there'll be a lot of drawbacks, there'll be a lot of challenges up in the way while you're taking this campaign forward or advocacy campaigns forward. But you need to remember that you're not alone in this at any time of your campaign or whatever you're doing, because we've been through the same, we're going through the same as well with the change in tenures and different things that come along. But it has been a long fight, and we're always in it together. As long as we hold a motive that's for young people's sexual and reproductive health and rights, there can always be areas that we can work on together. That's such a good question because I've been following you guys, both Shida Kranti and Feminist Futures Nepal. Does this create some disturbance?
Do you want some break or like?
No, I don't know. I can speak a lot, just so I don't want to.